On today's episode of Locked on Wilds, the Wild do not move in the NHL Draft Lottery, but Chicago gets left at the altar.
You're Locked on Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is happening, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked on Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast. We are your team every day, and we thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. On today's episode of Locked on Wild, we'll recap the draft lottery. Minnesota Wild stay put at 13. Not really a surprise there. And we'll get you started with the first of our draft profiles. We'll be talking about Carter Yakemchuk today and Adam Jiricek. So a couple of defensemen for you here. And we'll explain the process as to what's going to happen with those draft profiles as well. My name is Seth Topal, your daily Minnesota Wild insider. And Macklin Celebrini, you are not a Chicago Blackhawk, as the San Jose Sharks win the NHL Draft Lottery. And so they will be taking Macklin, unless barring some sort of insane like out-of-body experience in which they just decide, we want to go in a different direction. Macklin Celebrini will be going to the San Jose Sharks, and as a result, the Wild don't have to worry about contending with Connor Bedard and Macklin Celebrini multiple times a year, with them both being in the Central Division. The draft lottery went like this. San Jose gets the number 1 pick. Chicago gets the 2. Anaheim gets the number 3 overall pick. Columbus at 4. Montreal at 5. The Utah Hockey Club, whatever they're calling themselves, they are the 6th pick. Ottawa at 7. Seattle at 8. Calgary at 9. New Jersey Devils at 10. Buffalo at 11. Philadelphia at 12. The Minnesota Wild had a 2% chance of moving up. I know the wording of how it was put was confusing because technically they could have won the lottery, but then that would have only allowed them to move up as high as the 3rd overall pick. But the Wild stay put at 13. San Jose with the 14th pick via Pittsburgh. And then it was Detroit at 15 and St. Louis at 16 to round it out. So it was long odds that the Wild were going to be able to move up anyway. I don't think anybody was really expecting that they were going to be able to. So the Wild will pick at 13, barring them attempting to do anything such as move up or maybe try to make multiple picks in the first round this year. But this is the crux of the problem. And this is something that we've talked about quite a bit. Now, obviously, it doesn't at this point look all that great for either San Jose or Chicago or Anaheim having all of these top picks that they've had. But just look at the number of teams that have had picks in the top 5, something that the Wild have only done twice in their history, but never number 1 overall. You have to, if you are going to get a true impact player, like a true like franchise altering player is the better way to put it. You've got to be willing to sit in the mud for a little bit. And the difference between a player in the 3rd overall pick compared to 13 in the last 12 drafts, 8 of the 12 number 3 overall picks have held more value than the 13 overall picks. That's just how it works. the better players are up at the higher end of the draft. And as a result, those players are the ones that are more likely to be impact NHLers than throughout the rest of the first round. The other thing that happens too is if you don't nail the picks, that ends up being a that ends up being a big problem in and of itself. I mean, if you go back all the way, Marian Gaborik at 3rd overall in the 2000 draft, that worked out very well up until the point that Gaborik elected to leave. But that was the right selection at that point, was Marian Gaborik. Now, your 2001 first round pick, Mikko Koivu, a good defensive center, but not a number one guy. Very good defensively, very durable, played a ton of years. And that is, as a result, how he was able to build his numbers, but not a 1C. Pierre-Marc Bouchard in 2002 at 8 overall. Pierre-Marc Bouchard was a solid player for the Minnesota Wild, but, beyond that, they really didn't get any sort of, in that draft class especially, didn't really get any sort of value from the rest of the guys that were drafted, with the exception of Josh Harding, who they picked with their 2nd round pick. Brett Burns at 20, very solid pick, still in the league, still chugging away. But then 2004 is probably the big one. AJ Thielen, who never got to the NHL level at pick number 12. That was a swing and a miss. You get Benoit Pouliot with the 4th overall pick in 2005. James Shepard in 2006 played in 394 games, but had just 91 points. At the 9th overall pick, that was a swing and a miss. 16th overall in 2007, Colton Gillies just played in 154 games at the NHL level, 18 points. Tyler Kuma in 2008 played in 1 game at the NHL level. Another swing and a miss. Nick Leddy, a solid pick in 2009, played in over 1,000 games, has played in over 1,000 games in his NHL career. Mikhail Granlund, 9th overall in 2010. And so the picks start to get better. Like Granlund, Brodin, Dumba. But then 2013, no 1st round pick, and your 2nd round pick is Gustav Olofsson. If it doesn't matter, Alex Tuck in 2014, solid pick. Joel Eriksson Ek in 2015 has worked out tremendously. That 2015 draft with Joel Eriksson Ek and Kirill Kaprizov is one of the better ones that the Wild have had in their history. But you have many misses amongst all of the hits so far. Matt Boldy looks like a hit. Marco Rossi has really rebounded after a tough start to his NHL career. But then, Philip Johansson still has not gotten to the NHL level. 24th overall pick in 2018. So it doesn't matter where you draft. You have to you have to hit on the pick. And the entire crux of the NHL draft process is just hoping that your evaluation of players is right and that you can turn a player into a star, into an NHLer. Because as much as it is about the player's own skill set and demeanor that they bring to the table, it is also about their fit in the organization and what you do to develop them based off of what you need. So everybody has different rankings and different thoughts on a particular player. It's all about if you can get them to turn into something within your organization and your system. So It's 13th overall pick. There are going to be some appealing options there for the Minnesota Wilds, and we're going to spend the next month plus leading up to the draft by sneaking in some draft profiles so that when a player is selected by the Minnesota Wild, you can fall back and look at our thoughts on the particular player from the lead up to the NHL draft. We will start those draft profiles here through the rest of the episode, and we will give you an appealing look at some players who could potentially be there at 13 for the Minnesota Wild. So Wild stay put at 13. We'll take a look at one player that could be available at that spot as we continue today's episode of Locked on Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is brought to you by Game Time. Folks, the Minnesota Timberwolves are rolling through the NBA playoffs at this point in the season, and they come back to Target Center on Friday for Game 3 of their second-round series against Denver. How cool would it be to be part of the experience, be part of the atmosphere, part of the vibe that will be Target Center? Game Time can help you try to snag last-minute tickets for Friday's game against the Nuggets. The things that I love most about Game Time is they offer you last-minute deals. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, but also concerts, comedy, theater, and more. They also give you zone deals. You can save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats for you. Plus, they also offer their lowest price guarantee. If you find tickets that are cheaper, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Plus, Game Time's ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Today's episode is also brought to you by Indeed. There is no I in team, but there is one in Indeed, and that is the hiring platform you need to build yours. When you're hiring, you need Indeed. With Instant Match, over 80% of employers get quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job, according to Indeed Data US. Indeed does the hard work for you. Indeed shows you candidates whose resumes on Indeed fit your description immediately after you post, so you can hire faster. You can join over the more than 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your post at Indeed.com/lockedon. Offer good for a limited time. Claim your $75 credit now at Indeed.com/lockedon. That's Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Who is Carter Yakemchuk? We will be attempting to answer that question here as we begin our NHL draft profiles, which you can view on YouTube as part of the NHL Prospects playlist on the Locked on Wild channel. We will start with Scott Wheeler, who ranked his top 32 prospects in the NHL draft, and Yakemchuk is right at number 13, which is where Tankathon has the Minnesota Wild selecting the right-handed defenseman who is 6'3" in that spot. Here's what Wheeler has to say about Carter Yakemchuk. One of the highest scoring and most penalized draft-eligible WHL defensemen in recent WHL history. Yakemchuk broke the rare 30-goal, 70-point benchmarks and also sailed past 100 penalty minutes with the Hitmen, who missed the playoffs this year. That is a year after he scored 19 goals, third among WHL defensemen on a middle-of-the-pack team, and was the only 2024 draft eligible to make one of the WHL's all-star teams when he was named a Central Division second all-star last season, which was important considering he was only a couple of weeks away from being eligible for the 2023 draft. Wheeler thought he was mostly unnoticeable at the U18 Worlds for Canada a year ago, but part of that was his role and usage, and he looked completely himself in an even greater role on another lackluster team this season. Led by his instincts, plenty of confidence, and legit skill for a D his size, he generated a lot from the back end for a Hitmen team that generated little. While his game in the WHL does come with some give and take, he's got pro size, a pro shot, which is maybe an understatement given his gaudy goal totals, and an attack mentality that is complemented by an active disposition to eagerly jump off the line or into the rush, and also a developing sense for when to hold it or hold back or outlet it. He also protects the puck extremely well for a defenseman, which allows him to make the most of his decisions to involve himself in the play around the offensive zone, holding pucks past and away from reaching defenders and sometimes dazzling one-on-one. It's not uncommon to see him take a puck to the inside off the wall, and while I'd say he's a good but not great defender, he's got the size and the tools to take the steps he needs to be to there, and he plays really hard at both ends. Would like to see his skating, which is fine but not a strength, improve, particularly from a standstill where he can be a little slow out of the blocks. There were games this season in which he dictated terms with his offense and physicality, really taking charge on the ice. If he can get a little quicker and continue to mature in his decision-making, he's got real upside. After bouncing between the back of my second tier and the front of the third tier throughout the season, though I ultimately settled on the latter, there's a clear group of 6 in this draft for Wheeler, but he's also clearly the 6th. His handedness might help him go a little earlier than 1 or 2 of these have that Wheeler has in front of him. We will go to the hockey writers. And here's the thoughts from Logan Horn on Carter Yakemchuk, who is ranked. Here are the rankings, at least consensus. Daily Faceoff has Yakemchuk the 12th prospect in this draft. Bob McKenzie of TSN has him 12th as well. Corey Pronman of The Athletic has Yakemchuk 3rd. The hockey writers, their panel has 15th, 20th, and 9th. So here's what Horn has to say. Carter Yakemchuk is one of the oldest first-year eligible prospects in the 2024 draft class, being just a few days too young to make the cut for the 2023 draft. Horn is of the belief that he would have been a first-round pick in last year's draft had he been eligible, and is a firm believer that he'll be taken within the first 10 picks of this year's draft. Yakemchuk is a big offensive defenseman with a right-handed shot and great skill with the puck. He was phenomenal for the Calgary Hitmen this season, a team that seriously lacked offensive firepower. As a result, Yakemchuk sometimes simply decided the team needed some offense and was sliced through the entire opposing team to create a great chance off the blue line. Puck skills are one thing in situations like this, but another reason he is so successful while cutting through traffic is how well he protects the puck. Standing at 6'3", Yakemchuk's reach serves him well, and he's great at manipulating checkers' sticks while under pressure. He's also a major goal-scoring threat from the blue line where he can score with a heavy and accurate point shot. Yakemchuk isn't the most agile skater, but his top speed is solid, and that when combined with his reach, makes him a solid rush defender, even when he overcommits in the offensive zone. He has the willingness to battle on defense and boxes out opposing forwards well, not giving up an inch around the crease. Yakemchuk is a great physical player at the junior level. While his skating is a very minor concern in Horn's eyes, I'd say the biggest question surrounding Yakemchuk is if his brain will be able to keep up in the NHL. He plays at a high pace decently well, but his decision-making is what gives me pause at times. It usually manifests itself in the offensive overcommitment and leaning a bit too hard into being the lead offensive creator for the Hitmen. I do think some of his questionable decision-making could be reduced on a better team where he can take a little bit of a step back and allow his teammates to lead the push on offense a bit more. However, this is the style he's likely being asked to play for a junior team in need of any amount of dynamic offense it can get. Last season, Yakemchuk had the third most goals among WHL defensemen with 19. This year, he led all defensemen league-wide in goals with 30. That number makes him the first WHL defender to score at least 30 goals in their first draft-eligible season since Ian White did it back in the 2001-2002 season 22 years ago. Yakemchuk scored 71 points in 66 games, which made him the team's second highest scorer despite being an 18-year-old defenseman. He also finished the regular season as the fifth highest scoring defender in the WHL, behind players like Luka Cagnoni and Denton Matejchuk. Draft projection. There is a consensus top group in this year's draft class that is developing, made up of either 12 or 13 players, depending on who you ask. Yakemchuk is in that group according to the vast majority of prospect evaluators, but Horn thinks he'll go even higher than that on draft day. His offensive potential should be enough for him to easily be a top 10 pick, considering his size and position, and Yakemchuk thinks he will end up as a top 6 pick in the 2024 draft, given his dynamic offense, size, and position. Okay, so Horn thinks he will be drafted a little higher than where the Athletic has him at 13. But the things that jump off the page for me is the size, the offensive ability, and the fact that it's mentioned that he is a lot of the areas in which he receives demerits for are because the team that he's on is bad. Like the fact that Yakemchuk is being asked to do probably more than he should because the team is bad eases those concerns for me, because the hope then is that when he goes to an NHL team, and we got to think about it this way. You are drafting somebody, if you draft a defenseman, you're drafting somebody that you're likely going to pair with Brock Faber if you get a high-end defenseman in this first round. So Yakemchuk being an offense-first defenseman, not afraid to step up in the rush, with the ability to kind of push the pace himself, that's very appealing considering what the Minnesota Wild have on their back end right now. And you think about not only this, but some acumen potentially on the power play. If he was the pick at 13, there's a lot to like about what Carter Yakemchuk brings to the table. And so if he is the pick for the Wild at 13, no matter what level of hockey you're at, whether it be at the high school level or all the way up to the WHL, to the KHL, you name it, 30 goals is impressive. 30 goals is an eye-turning number for any player, let alone a defenseman. And so the offensive skill is extremely tantalizing with Carter Yakemchuk, and also the fact that he is 6'3". Those are the reasons that I think he would be a good pick at number 13. And so if Carter Yakemchuk is the pick at 13, welcome in to the Minnesota Wild organization. We will take a look at another defensive prospect that will potentially be available for the Minnesota Wild at 13 as we talk about Adam Jiricek after this here on Locked On Wild. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by Monopoly Go. All right, game off. We're going to pause here to talk a little bit more about Monopoly Go. I was just playing it on my phone this morning after my first alarm of the day went off. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about Monopoly Go, but there just is so much exciting fun with this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. There are so many different things that you can find here in Monopoly Go. Unique stickers you can trade with friends, to complete albums for big prizes, plus cool new pieces to travel the board with, and hilarious emojis for taunting your friends and you smash their buildings or take money from their vault. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now, free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. Who is Adam Jiricek? We will attempt to answer that question here on our latest NHL Draft profile on Locked on Wild. Let's go to Scott Wheeler's thoughts on Adam Jiricek. Adam Jiricek, the younger brother of Blue Jackets top prospect David Jiricek, is a summer birthday who worked his way from junior into Czechia's top pro rung as a 16-year-old last season. He lost this season to a pair of knee injuries, one right before the World Juniors and then another almost right away in the tournament, the latter of which required surgery and ended his season. Though, and even before he went down, Wheeler didn't think his draft year had gone as well as he would have hoped and was starting to question why some were as high on him as they were. Still, it's not a coincidence he played atop Czechia's defense alongside Los Angeles Kings draft pick Jakub Dvorak, even as an underager at last year's U18 Worlds, and it's not a coincidence he made the early jump to the pro game. He was also excellent at the Hlinka Gretzky Cup. He doesn't have quite the presence his brother has, but Adam plays the game with confidence and intention and has shown real ambition at times against his peers. He's got good four-way mobility and active disposition. He has also shown at the pro level that he can simplify and play a more effective game, balanced shooting mechanics, and an eye for spacing and for identifying opportunities to jump on both sides of the puck, plus legit skill with the puck to build on. There are definitely tools and room to grow his game and fill out his frame. He's also competitive. Wheeler likes his defensive habits, and he's got size and ability. Wheeler also remains a little more cautious in his evaluation of him than most scouts because he feels a little more raw than the defenseman in front of him on the rankings, and the injury is a setback. Wheeler thought about ranking him one or two spots lower here. Let's go to the hockey writers. Adam Jiricek, profile from Matthew Zater. He is ranked, according to NHL Central Scouting, 4th among European skaters. The hockey writers had him 14th, 18th, and 12th. Bob McKenzie of TSN had him 14th. Craig Button, 9th. Dauber Prospects has him 22nd, and Smart Scouting has him 8th. Here's the profile from Matthew Zater. Heading into the 2023-2024 season, Adam Jiricek was being mentioned alongside top 10 locks Artem Levshinov and Sam Dickinson. Now he's dropped to the top 20 in a few rankings and could end up being a steal for a team that is on track to make the playoffs this season. The drop is not based off performance, though, as he's been injured since the first game of the 2024 World Juniors. After having surgery on his knee shortly after, he has also been ruled out of the 2024 U18 World Championship, yet another showcase event for scouts to further evaluate top prospects. Basically, all scouts have his video and live viewings from the first few months of the regular season in Czechia and the Hlinka Gretzky tournament last summer, where he was one of Team Czechia's best players. That's not a lot of recent play to go off of, especially when his peers have been playing and improving around him. Despite that, Jiricek is still a high-end talent with the potential to become a solid top 4 or even top pairing defenseman in the future. His strengths lie in his size, skating, mobility, and first pass. Similar to his brother David, who was drafted by the Columbus Blue Jackets in 2022, he is a he's a well-rounded two-way player that can be used in all situations, from the power play to the penalty kill and everywhere in between. He isn't shy about taking the body either. Once he bulks up and fills into his 6'2" frame, he's going to be a scary presence when opponents enter the offensive zone against him. Jiricek also has a bomb from the point, but some scouts have pointed out he doesn't always make it to the net with enough frequency. It's great to have a big shot, but if it doesn't make it to the goaltender, it's kind of useless. Getting shots through traffic is a skill in and of itself. And for it to be a legitimate weapon in the future, he has to work on that aspect of it. Another weakness of Jiricek is his skating style. While he has good acceleration and mobility, it sometimes looks awkward as he moves up the ice. But with some work with a skating coach, that can easily be ironed out in the future. As a result, Zader is not too worried about that aspect. All in all, he has a massive ceiling as a modern defensive defenseman like Devon Taves, Charlie McAvoy, or Jacob Slavin. Defenders that are good all around, can move the puck, and provide solid, no-nonsense play in their own zone. Here's the projection for Jiricek. Despite the injury, Jiricek should still be selected in the first round, just not in the top 10 like everyone expected before the World Juniors. His overall package might be too difficult to ignore for many teams, especially for the ones that miss out on Levshinov, Dickinson, Boyum, and Parik. Zader sees him going around the 15 to 20 mark, maybe even to a team that makes the playoffs. So that is a look at Adam Jiricek. Just looking at some of the other rankings here. Number 30th overall prospect by EliteProspects.com. As mentioned, 22 for Daily Faceoff. So some of the things that I like here too is even just mentioning that a player has all the tools needed to translate to a modern defenseman that can give you a little bit on both sides. That I like. That is somebody that you can plug in and not have to worry about as really at all. Somebody that has profile as for sure top 4, but maybe even a top pairing defenseman too. Now, the injuries obviously are a concern, but you're talking about a 17-year-old kid here who certainly has plenty of time to bounce back from them. Utilizing the shot more and some of the skating, as Zader pointed out, are things that you can develop. That's where the development side of this comes into play. You can coach players up to taking more shots, and those are things that can be coached. But some of the other instincts, the size and the instinct to play that no nonsense type style, I like that. I like throwing that into this mix as somebody who's just going to do their job, and you don't have to worry about what they're doing on the back end. Now, statistically, just looking at Jiricek's stats, he played for HC Pilsen in 2021-2022, had 5 goals, 15 assists, 20 points in 36 games played, and 14 penalty minutes. In 2022-2023, he played for the HC Pilsen U20 team for 41 games. He had 12 goals there, 17 assists, 29 points, and 24 penalty minutes in 41 games. And this season, he has played for 5 different teams. The U20 team for Czechia played 3 games there with no points. HC Pilsen played 19 games, 1 point, and 2 penalty minutes. He played for the U18 team, had a goal, 3 assists, and 4 points in 9 games. So he has played at a bunch of different stops throughout his career so far. If he can recover from those injury woes, he would be another solid pick and is slotted in. Tankathon has him going 14th to the San Jose Sharks with their second pick. So he would be right in the mix too. Another defenseman with some size and maybe not as much offensive acumen or bulldog as a guy like Carter Yakemchuk has, but still would be right there for the Minnesota Wild if they elect to take him at 13. So there is a look at Adam Jiricek. And if he is the pick for the Minnesota Wild at 13, welcome into the Minnesota Wild organization. All right, that will do it for today's episode of Locked on Wild. Again, all of these draft profiles are going to be clipped and put on our YouTube channel. So if you want to take a look back, more importantly, if you want to take a look at the particular player once the Wild have made a selection at the end of June, that's why we're doing this, so that you can circle back and not have to go through a full episode to find the info on those particular players. So we will have a playlist of those on YouTube so you can enjoy as we get closer to the draft, and we'll do a ton of other profiles like this between now and the draft. Make sure to like today's episode on YouTube. Make sure to give us a nice 5-star review on your favorite audio platforms if you're listening in the car or at your desk or wherever you may be tuning in. We thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen and your top choice for Minnesota Wild news and information here throughout the offseason. We've got new episodes for you every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.